Hello and welcome to a Keybind guide of sorts. Mostly aimed for MMORPGs like Star Wars, The Old Republic and World of Warcraft and the kind which give you about 40 abilities per class. This is a brand new character here with completely cleared out keys, as you can see. Why am I doing this? Well, for one, this is how I imagine it might have been back in the day. The discussion where a boss walks to the office and is like, well, what did you folks decide to do with the keyboard? Well, see, we have these like 40 abilities per class, so we had this idea. Well, can't we just slap the WASD which all those first person shooter guys use? But boss, I mean, with that you can only use like 6 abilities. So what? We'll just make the content be so that it can be done with 6 abilities. Get onto it. But, boss? Get onto it. Yes, boss. I mean, really. Why ever have this been used in MMORPGs for all these years is beyond me. Basically, with modifier keys of Shift, Control, Alt and WSD, you gain access to about 18 abilities easily, 6 and 24 with a little bit of fiddling and so forth. And 24 abilities is small amount for Star Wars The Old Republic, where majority of the classes are around 36 to 40 on healers, and that's not including potions and all that other stuff. Then games like World of Warcraft throws about 40 abilities at your face, depending a little on your class. So yeah, at least the Secret World only throws 7 at your face, so that makes it easier on the newer ones. However, my issue with this has always been that it's not very workable. So after playing MMORPGs since original EverQuest, I have over the years developed another system which works pretty well and works for other games as well, which will be shown at the end of this Star Wars bit. However, let's get on to these. I'm going to talk while I'm quickly making the keys out, and I suggest pausing the video if you want to follow this or not. Also, before I start, note that doing this, like moving away from WASD, which you might have used for years and so forth, you will be playing like crap for a couple weeks until you get used to this setup. But when you do, you will realize that life is much easier because you will have access to all of your abilities within reasonable pace of time. As in, it doesn't take Shift, Control, Alt, whatever to find your button. You can just press it. It might take a little bit of reaching, so if you have small hands, consider doing something else, maybe? Like getting Nostromo speed bat, but whatever. I personally, even for small-handed people, this has been doable, simply because, well, it's easier to do this on your regular keyboard than it is to pay for peripherals like mouse with 15 buttons. There is no need for any of that. So, let's move on. This Keybind setup has been built around using TFGH as your movement keys. That is very center of your keyboard. Only modifier key you will have real access to is Alt, so that might be a little bit of an issue, but for the most part the main thing is to get real access to all the other keys, as in quick bars. But first, targeting. Once you start using your keyboards, to use most of your things, you really don't need a lot of keys for targeting. In this case, only mouse wheel will be used. Mouse wheel and Alt as a modifier key, because you can use your mouse pointer to target things on the screen. Quick bars, all the keys around the movement keys will be used as quick bar keys. That means absolutely everything, because you want access to as many spells and abilities as quickly as possible, so it makes sense to put them right beside your actual movement keys, so you can use all the abilities with keyboard instead of mouse. Some of those buttons you will have to really reach for, so put abilities you almost never use into hard to reach places. Also, this has been done on a Scandinavian keyboard, so for the US folks and whatever, I am sure you can figure out which keys those represent actually. So there you have it. And still continuing with it, with the F1 through F8 keys usually used for potions and things like that. And couple modifier keys used for a couple of component abilities, because for Star Wars The Old Republic, those two abilities are always passive and attack. Screenshot and toggle user interface, only things you might actually really need. And then interface, note that all the numbers here are actual numpad keys. That means we are using numpad for all the things you usually open when you are not in combat. Character panels, inventories, skill panes, your guild panels, preferences, all this stuff. World map can be opened quickly from the numpad plus by using your right hand's thumb, the one hand you use on your mouse. For left-handed people, this might be a little bit of a problem. Chat buttons, couple of them. Everyone needs a chat reply of some sort. And finally, camera keys. Here is where the main things are done. Now you should have a bit better picture of what I was talking about. So the main thing being TFGH as movement keys, everything else around them for easy, fast access to all your spells with keyboard instead of having to click them with your mouse, leaving mouse almost fully for targeting purposes. And all the stuff you don't necessarily need quickly are on the numpad. Inventories, character panes, all this stuff. The other nice benefit of this is the knob you have on your F key. Most keyboards have F and J as tiny knobs on them. What the knob on the F key does is that it prevents your hand almost entirely from ever being in the wrong position, because your ring finger rests on that thing and you feel it with the tip of your finger all the time when you are using your keyboard. So when your hand is resting in the correct position for your movement keys, so you don't accidentally hit spells or whatever, you will feel that little knob under your finger. The secret world is actually playable with WASD simply because it only asks you to use 7 abilities at once. However, nothing prevents from using the TFGH, and I have used that for so long that I still use it, and it works just as well. When it comes to MMORPGs of late, I really dislike the 1,000,001 abilities they try to put in, and I'm hoping more of the developers in the future start doing something about the actual combat system and lowering the amount of abilities. I really like this thing. Also, let's hope they do something with the user interface, but I don't want to get into that because I could talk about that for hours. Moving on. And here we are looking at a first-person shooter, Blacklight Retribution in this case. And as you can see, the same movement key setup is here. And all the keys around it have been used for other things. Here the lack of a modifier key really doesn't hurt much. Sure, I use Alt for sprinting, but it could just as well be some other key. And as you can see, the secondary columns have not been touched. Those are defaults. Just the main ones have been changed. So, the setup works just as well for FPS games as it does for MMORPGs. The same setup can also be used for League of Legends just as well. I'm just slowly going to scroll through this Keybind setup I have here, and you can pause the video in case you miss something. And for those of you who just don't care, there is Crimson Elites behind on the screen to keep you distracted. Here it might feel like the lack of a modifier key other than Alt might actually hurt you, but it can be played around, as you can see. So, with that said, if you play multiple types of games, then this Keybind setup might very well be exactly what you need to get the most out of your games. And once you are used to it, you can use it for all sorts of games. On the flip side, if you're only playing one type of a game, of one certain genre you're into, or you just don't care about the other types. For example, let's say you are mostly a first-person shooter player and don't play MMORPGs, as an example, then you really won't get much out of this setup as compared to just using the default stuff. However, only thing you will still get is the little knob on the F key, because that knob easily prevents your hand from being in the wrong position. But thank you very much for watching.